So Hallie, can you tell us about the genesis of Connecting Cultures? How did we come to this project today?
So our Connecting Cultures program originated in 2013, and the goal of that program was to use theater as a means of generating dialogue and increasing understanding between people from different cultures. This particular Connecting Cultures project began in 2019, and like we said, that was made possible through the Doris Duke Foundation for Islamic Art, Building Bridges Through the Arts program, which has the goal of increasing respect and trust between Muslim and non-Muslim people who live in the same community. And so in our case, that's Louisville. So in order to achieve that goal, we have been doing quite a bit of community outreach as a means of generating storytelling and ideas that were then used as inspiration for an original audio immersive children's drama that was written by our wonderful Denmo. And the title of that is Zaynab's Night of Destiny. And in the audio immersive, there will be various characters that are represented that are often overlooked in children's literature and that are representative of our various partner groups that we've been working with over the past few years. So those groups are Noor Islamic School of Louisville and Newcomer Academy, LYG, and Imagine Blind Players. And the overall hope for the project is that through this representation of characters from various backgrounds, children across our region will see themselves represented in the story and will feel seen and welcomed into our theater community as the next generation of storytellers.
Good. You mentioned this is an audio immersive experience and an audiobook. Could you define what those two are, just so everyone knows and understands the differences or similarities?
Sure. Well, audio immersive is it really, I think, it's a blend of, in the theater world, you would say an immersive experience is really being teleported into another world. You know, it's a little different than just watching a show where you're in a audience and sort of in the same place. An immersive experience, kind of, you move through the world. And so that word sort of comes from the physical location of being immersed in a place. And audio immersive kind of came as this idea of a way of pivoting when COVID, when the quarantine happened and COVID happened. Hallie and I and Heather Burns, we really sort of talked about how can we still keep this project alive, and the idea of an audio immersive emerged. Because this was always intended to be, you know, for theater audiences, a play in its origin, a musical. And so audio immersive was, you know, so what came was really a story, a book. And we sort of shifted that so that the immersive element comes through both in the content and how the audience would interact with the piece through a musical score. And then also in different ways after each chapter, there's different ways to engage with each piece. So, you know, that, I think that's the part that feels really exciting, is that it's not, you know, because of the confines and constraints of this time, we were really able to develop an entirely new way of exploring story. So that part feels really exciting, where it's, you know, it's music, it's visual, it's, you know, ideally the piece would happen over a series of days. So it's not just about being consumed in 50 minutes, so that there really is a sense that the seed of the story can be planted on many sensory levels.
Denmo, if we can stay with you, could you tell us a little bit about the story? Give us a brief synopsis of Zaynab's Night of Destiny.
Sure. Well, Zaynab's Night of Destiny, let's see, where do we begin? Because the piece was always the intended audience, you know, the intended audience is elementary, K through 5. One of the first places we began was like, what are the struggles that age was really fighting with? And knowing that one of the goals of that the grant was really supporting was to build these bridges between Muslim and non-Muslim communities, particularly in the Louisville area. So those were some of the inspiration questions that were holding the piece at its origin. And then through the incredible work of Hallie and Heather, they gathered a lot of people from the community, from the specific communities that Hallie mentioned in her share. Noor, newcomer, Imagine Blind Players, that there was an opportunity to really hear their stories. And so I'm getting to what is the story about. So I really centered it around Zaynab Tabriz. Her and her mother emigrate from Egypt and land in Louisville. And so the story sort of starts with a little girl moving from Cairo to Kentucky and not really knowing, like, what is that going to be like? And at its core, it's about a girl that just doesn't feel like she belongs. And she gets invited to her first sleepover ever. And she's so excited. And it just happens to be Ramadan. And it's the last 10 days of Ramadan, which actually are the holiest days of Ramadan, one of which will be the holiest night, Laylat al-Qadr. Laylat al-Qadr in Arabic translates to night of glory, or night of power, or night of destiny. And it's not a night that is set like Christmas or like New Year's. It'll happen on one of those days and an odd number. And it is said that it was the night that Prophet Muhammad, peace be with him, had received the Quran. And that is why it's holy. And also, if we pray on that day, the heavens open up. This is sort of at the heart, it's belief. So she asks to have a sleepover, and her mother says no. And she's devastated, as any child would be, And her tears, she runs to her room, she hides in her closet, she starts crying, and she feels really alone. And from that moment of being alone, her tears open a doorway into the Sahara. And we go into an amazing adventure where it's this little girl in the desert really reckoning with herself, Who am I in the world as an 11-year-old, as a 10-year-old? What does it mean to have faith in a culture that doesn't really resemble my faith? What do I believe in, and where do I stand? So she meets all these characters along the way that challenge her, that support her, that confront her, and then she comes back. So it's an extraordinary piece, I'll be honest. And I have for a very long time wanted to explore Laylat al-Qadr, the night of power, in a way that felt meaningful. And this was the perfect opportunity to break open that. I was raised in a Muslim family. I didn't know about Laylat al-Qadr. I didn't know about the night of power. And so it just became so apparent how many of the stories that are really deeply entrenched in certain communities get hidden. And so I think a part of understanding is recognizing, when people like refugees, immigrants, people come from outside of the community into a community, one way of bridging that is recognizing what they hold dear in their own communities and celebrating that too.
I can't wait to find out how this adventure ends.